Although my family's Thai, a lot of people don't think that I'm Thai. And so I get people that'll come up and they'll be like, hi, can we help you? You know, their English may not be perfect, obviously, but I don't stop them. I'm just like, oh, yeah, can you help me around? And then they will direct me and like they'll pull me in directions just so that I can make sure you get on this BTS exit right here. And it does make me feel a sense of comfort that for an international traveler that might be a little lost or just kind of looking around, there's going to be someone out there that's going to try to help you for sure.
Welcome to Travel Matters, the official podcast of TBEX. Here are your hosts, the Radio Vagabond, Palle and TBEX CEO, Rick Calvert.
Welcome to Travel Matters and Rick Calvert. It's almost time.
And one day, right?
Or one day exactly. Are you guys all ready? You got all the badges, you got all the posters, you got all the stuff in order.
Yeah, everything's.
It was scrambling.
Yeah, everything is
and
ready to roll.
And who are you bringing from the team? Who are some of the people from the TBEX team that we're all going to say hi to when we get our badges?
Patty, Donna, Jan, Patrick, Rex, our new video guy who you met in Tri-Cities.
Awesome.
Jalma Marin, Shane, of course, will be up from Kenya. Tamiko Harvey and Tim Leffel.
And Rick Calvert.
And me. Yeah, I'll be there.
Yeah.
And you.
And me. Yeah, that's right. We got two great interviews this week, and let's just start with the first one.
Okay, Palle, we are here with Candy Krajangsri.
That's good. Yeah,
that was good.
That was really good.
I'm impressed.
PR and digital marketing for TAT Los Angeles.
That's right, the Los Angeles office.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, gentlemen.
So we are bringing TBEX to Thailand for the second time this November to Phuket. I guess the first thing we should get out of the way, do we pronounce it Phuket or Phuket?
It is pronounced Phuket.
Phuket.
Yes, that's the Thai way, but if it's just right, it's Phuket. Phuket.
Yeah, sometimes I think it's Phuket without the T because in
that
some
sounds very European.
Yeah. It does, yeah.
I've always said Phuket, but I've heard people pronounce it the other way, and I'm dumb, so I thought it could be wrong. So we're excited to be coming back to Thailand, and we just had a big powwow. You guys, if anybody's never worked with TAT, you guys have a really big team.
Yes, we travel as a tribe everywhere we go.
Yes. And we had a meeting with, I think, 8 of you today. It was really great, super productive. But, one of the most important things with TBEX, we want to engage with the social media team from the destinations that we work with. You guys have a lot of social media people as well, don't you?
We do. So I'm based out of the LA office, and our social media team handles not only our LA, but we also have someone who's based in New York, and then we also include our Toronto team. So it's really a North American effort, and all of our other offices as well have their own social media teams as well as our head office. So. And
do you in your LA office focus on the region, or do you also focus on specific categories? Like, are you dealing with travel creators, food creators? You guys kind of divide that responsibility by vertical as well?
Luckily, the way that we share, we just kind of share things across the board. Me in particular, just because I do love food, I do tend to push out a lot more food-related content. And then Los Angeles has the biggest concentration of Thai people outside of Thailand. We consider it the 77th province. And I mean, that's what it used to be called in the past. And so the biggest concentration of Thai people. And so we also have the largest amount of Thai restaurants. And so there's a plethora of Thai food, Thai chefs. And so I'm always looking for Thai food-related content that really pushes and drives people to go to Thailand too.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I'm really looking forward to getting back to Thailand is the food.
You've got to tell me, what is your favorite Thai dish?
Oh, you put me on the spot there. That bowl, what's it called?
The bowl? Is it a noodle? Is it a soup? Is it rice?
Palle making the hand gestures for those that can't see him trying to describe the bowl.
What's the bowl? Pad Thai?
Yeah, that's the one.
Okay. So that's a very traditional, mainstream noodle dish, which is great. I love it. Do you go for the spices? Any of you guys go for the spices?
Well, I remember I had something that was in Bangkok, and they said, do you want it medium spicy or spicy? Thai spicy.
Thai spicy.
And I said medium. And I like spicy, but I better say medium. And it was so spicy that I just had to give up.
Really? Medium was too spicy?
Medium was too spicy.
And mixed with the humidity, I can only imagine how much you were sweating after that.
Oh, totally, yeah.
I mean, the cool thing about Pad Thai is that it really came out during like World War II, out of sustenance and things like that, the usage of rice noodles and stuff. But a variation of that noodle is it changes throughout the region. You can definitely find something a little different down south, obviously. Something to the north has a variation of it too. So depending on where you are, you get your own version of Pad Thai.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you, Rick? Any favorites?
I like spicy as well. Thai chicken, I guess, is what we call it. My wife
chicken, like a grilled,
my wife doesn't like Thai food, so I don't get to eat it that often. She prefers, and I never even say the word pho, which I don't like pho, the Vietnamese stuff.
Pho.
Okay,
the
she
noodles.
loves pho, and I love Thai food. So unless I'm like away from her, I don't really get to get Thai food. So I'm looking forward to going to Thailand so I can have some Thai food.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the reason that TBEX is going to Thailand.
Yeah, so we can get some Thai food.
Finally.
Yeah. So I'm curious, how much are you creating your own content for TAT, and how much are you resharing content from other creators, other sources?
So I think as of right now, we're looking at maybe 80% that is user generated. And we love when people tag us, at Thailand Insider. So for any of you who aren't following us yet, do follow us at Thailand Insider. And we also do create our own as well. The thing is, during the pandemic, because a lot of us weren't traveling, we've had to really open it up to users as well. But when we were there on press trips or whatever, we would also kind of generate our own.
Yeah. And do you do a lot of programs with influencers and travel creators?
Yes, we do. So depending on whether we have press trips or if someone reaches out to us as well, we can always do some collaborations. We're always open to that.
Yeah, I know we were talking about press trips and fam trips in our meeting earlier. So.
Yeah, and speaking of that, I'd like to know. And speaking of that, I'd like to know what have you in store for us travel content creators when it comes to fam trips? Have you already planned out what can happen with the fam trips?
So I believe when it comes to the ones for Phuket, for the TBEX portion, they had just recently talked about the concept of NFT, and then I believe that's. So you probably know it as the non-fungible token, but the way that our head office has rolled it out, they've talked about it being nature for N, F for food, and then T is in Thainess. So there's three main categories that everyone will get to participate and experience while they're in Thailand, and it's really a chance to kind of get down into the local communities, those off the beaten path things. Obviously, Phuket is a very, very big destination, but there's a whole nother side to it too. It's so rich with history, and it's kind of that melting pot for a lot of different cultures that came into Thailand. And I don't think a lot of people realize that too. You think of it as that quintessential beach destination, lots of really, really great properties, but it's so much more. And I think that this experience will kind of really open it up to all participants that do come out in November.
I really like the clever marketing take on NFT, nature, food, and Thainess. But Thainess, I know you guys have used that term for a while, and I'm curious to hear how you define it. To me, when I hear that, it seems like it stands for Thai culture and kind of the attitudes and the way things are done in Thailand. Is that what would you call Thainess?
I think we all kind of debate a little bit about what it means, but I think you really touched on that for sure. It's also the Thai smile, the Thai sense of hospitality. We really pride in that too. And the idea that once you've come to Thailand, you've entered a home. You are now a part of the family. And so you've been encompassed with that Thainess, that sense of culture.
That's the first thing I noticed in Thailand is the hospitality of Thai culture.
Yeah, and the first thing that comes to my mind when I think of Thailand and going there many times is the smiling faces. Always so friendly and open. And
always. I although my family's Thai, a lot of people don't think that I'm Thai, and so I get people that'll come up to me. Sometimes I don't even know where I'm at. Sometimes in Bangkok, I'm looking at a map, and some Thai person will come up and they'll be like, hi, can we help you? You know, their English may not be perfect, obviously, but I don't stop them. I'm just like, oh, yeah, can you help me around? And then they will direct me, and like they'll pull me in directions just so that I can make sure you get on this BTS exit right here. And it does make me feel a sense of comfort that, you know, for an international traveler that might be a little lost or just kind of looking around, there's going to be someone out there that's going to try to help you for sure.
Do you speak Thai?
I do. I went to Thai school on the weekends. That was kind of like a thing. I'm from LA, big Thai community. I went to Thai school. There's a Thai temple that has Thai classes, Thai classical music classes on the weekends. So I did that all my childhood.
Very nice. So let's talk a little bit about different regions in Thailand and places people should visit when they come to TBEX.
So they're coming in November, which is the most optimal time weather-wise. So there's really no bad part of Thailand to visit. I mean, there's never a bad part, obviously. But Thailand is split into 4 main regions. You've got the central region, which is around Bangkok. And so that's, you know, the major hub and all the areas at the central. Then you've got the northeast, which is technically more of the arid part of the country. A lot of historic temples are out there. Agriculture is out there as well, like big rice farms, paddies. Textiles come out of that region as well. If you're familiar with papaya salad, somtam, things like that, those have a lot of Laotian influences, so that type of food tends to be spicier in that region. Then you've got the northern part of Thailand, which is famous for Chiang Mai, Chiang Rai, those provinces. It's a lot of hilltop area, and it's a higher elevation, so it's a lot cooler too. And so for those who are really trying to stay away from the heat, the northern part of Thailand is probably one of my personal favorites. I think it's a lot slower than the rest of Thailand.
And very popular with digital nomads.
Oh, yes, for sure. And then obviously down south is where all the beaches are. But then I love the experiences of local fishing communities. One of my favorite parts of Thailand, southern Thailand, is probably Chumpon. I spend a lot of time there at a seahorse rehabilitation facility. So there's a lot of really ecological things going on too down south that we're working on. So
excellent. Palle? We're good?
We're good.
All right, that's good. Is there anything that you'd like us to talk about? And we'll edit this, by the way.
No worries. Just the idea that we're very, very excited for TBEX in Phuket. It's been such a long time and we're just so eager to welcome everyone back.
Absolutely.
How often do you go?
Okay, so pre-pandemic, I was there about maybe 8 times a year.
8 times a year?
In
wow.
2019, I was there 8 times.
Wow.
So,
a lot of frequent flyer miles.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And Thailand, I guess one last thing is... has been one of the earliest countries in Asia as far as opening up post-COVID.
So we technically opened up with a quarantine, obviously, back in July of 2021. And then that was on the premise that there was the Phuket sandbox as well. So yes, you did have to enter with a quarantine, but you were able to quarantine on Phuket Island. And, obviously with the testing and whatnot, you weren't restricted to staying in a hotel room. You could pretty much visit the entire island for those 14 days and then, visit the rest of the country after. And then I believe a couple months later, then they added some more provinces. So you could bounce around after the 7th day. And then I believe within the next couple of weeks, by May, things should really be alleviating as well. And hopefully by July, we'll announce that it'll be an endemic and a lot of restrictions should be gone by then. So hopefully by November, we should be in the clear. That's what we're hoping for.
We're knocking on wood.
Whatever wood we have.
Well, Candy, thank you so much for joining us. We're really looking forward to working with you and the whole team at TAT and Phuket and everyone in Thailand. And we're looking forward to seeing you there in Phuket this November.
Yes, so excited. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
See all the links mentioned in this episode in the show notes and on tbexcon.com/podcast.
After hearing Candy talk about Thailand and all the stuff that's waiting for us, I'm looking forward to this week's TBEX, but I'm also looking really forward to going to Thailand.
Absolutely. It's going to be a great event. We've got an amazing location where the venue, where the conference is. And Thailand, they always do a really, really, really good job. So,
yeah. I'm just going to do like Letterman would by saying our next guest needs no introduction.
I did that once. I introduced somebody to conference and I said, our next guest needs no introduction. It's somebody really famous, right? And somebody came up to me after saying, I have no idea who that person was. I wish you would have introduced them.
But seriously, you're going to enjoy the conversation we had with Michael Collins back at TBEX Tri-Cities.
Okay. Palle, we are here with our good friend, Michael Collins.
I think he's a newbie, isn't he?
Yeah.
Are you a first-timer, Mr.
No, I've been
Michael?
to Washington State before.
Okay, yeah. No, obviously we're here. We're here with a good old friend from Ireland.
So, Michael, it's been a while since we've seen each other.
Yes.
But that's not because you weren't traveling. You never stopped, really.
No, I'm not good at doing as I'm told. But I travel for lots of reasons. I travel for work in that every country in Europe was different. So some countries were completely locked down, others were slightly locked down, and it was a minefield. There were different rules. But there was kind of a very interesting game going on with many governments where they were obfuscating the truth, as in they were saying to people, don't travel, but actually the rules said you could travel.
Right.
So they were discouraging people. So if you were a member of the media, you could travel. If you were a company director, you could travel for business if you had a valid reason. So I was both. I could travel.
Right.
But the business is based in Ireland, but we've clients based all over the world. So therefore, we actually had to travel. So even though it was frowned upon and people didn't like the idea that I was traveling, I wasn't going to turn around to a client and say, oh, sorry, the Irish government would prefer that I don't travel. I would have lost the business. So I traveled.
And Michael and I, we in fact met each other in Berlin in March 2020 when we both went to the ITB that ended up being cancelled. And we thought, okay, there's something called a pandemic, but we didn't really take it that much serious. We went to a meetup. And looking back a few months after, I thought about, hey, we were giving hugs and everything because it was a bunch of old friends and nobody was wearing a mask, and that was in March
Masks
2020.
weren't even a thing in March of 2020.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, imagine trying to trace the chronology of when masks came in, when vaccinations came in, when testing came in. Like, we forget that all of that came in mad different stages.
Yes.
But can anyone remember when and what? No.
Now, Michael, you told me the other day you've been tested hundreds of times.
Well, definitely over 100. Maybe it's 200, I don't know. But yeah, definitely over 100. Because I had to. So you asked me an earlier question, did I travel? I did. I traveled through necessity. But I also traveled because I wanted to show what was going on. Because in some parts of Europe and some parts of the world, they were saying, okay, let's try and let travel happen and we'll do it through testing. So there was the rapid antigen test, there was the PCR test, there were different variations of the rapid antigen test and so on. So to be able to travel, I had to do a lot of testing.
So you were testing the tests?
Yes, so one, to travel just purely to, go on a press trip or to meet a client or do an event, I had to test. Then I was also testing to understand what was going on. So I did a trip, one big trip I did specifically to highlight testing. And to understand it as well for my own purposes. I did 3 days, 3 countries, 3 different airports and 3 different sets of rapid antigen tests. So I went Dublin, Paris, Vienna, Hamburg, Madrid, and did multiple different tests. And in every country and every airport, the testing was different. And that trip was only the rapid antigen test. I wasn't looking at the PCR test. So in Germany, for example, and in Austria, so the Germanic world, you had the test down the back of your throat, which was horrible. It was like a gag effect.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas in Ireland now, the norm has always been both nostrils. So there was different testing going on. And then I met the head of one of the labs in Germany, and he said to me, well, we have different types of antigen. Which one do you want? I was like, okay, I didn't know you have 2 types. So you have the rapid antigen, as in the lateral flow, as in the little drop on the little piece of paper, or you have the machine test, which is about 90 minutes, much more accurate. So I learned a lot, and it's a minefield, still is.
And some places, because I've been tested just as much, and in some places it's both when you're getting in on the plane and also when you land, you have to get a test there. And I've also had places where I had one in each nostril and the throat for the same test. So it varies a lot.
I was in one clinic, and it was obviously this clinic was getting its head around still testing. As in, there was very little guidance from government. As in, you must do the throat, you must do the nose. Like we had the CDC here in the US or the ECDC in Europe, all with different kind of variations, but no real detail. So an actual doctor in a clinic said to me, he says, oh, I see you're testing a lot. That's the first time I'm doing this, which was the rapid antigen test. Like, this was the first time this doctor was doing it in this clinic. And he said, well, let's do the nose. He says, do you say you were in Germany recently? I said, yeah. He said, what do they do there? I said, they do the throat as well. Oh, okay. Okay, I'll do both. Let's just play safe. Like, people were making it up as they were going along, you know?
Yeah.
So, like, it was such an imperfect system. I understand why it was in place, but, you know, there was a lot of politics around it, unfortunately.
And some of them in the nose, were barely in the nose, and some were, like, touching the back of my skull.
Oh, yeah, right into the brain. It was unpleasant, you know? But it was interesting. But what it did is it did eventually allow travel to reopen. And that's what it was all about. And like in Ireland, I don't know what happened in the rest of the world, but yeah, it did. There was flight shaming. I don't know if you remember, like kind of summer 2020, things were starting to open up and people just weren't sure. They'd had 6 months or whatever it was of the government saying stay at home.
Yeah.
You know, and the problem there is that people didn't understand that, you know, it wasn't about going on a summer holiday, going off to the beach. It's like people travel, for work, visiting friends and family, for study, for business, for so many reasons why travel is so important. Especially a country like Ireland, which was interesting. We're an island. You have to fly, really, to get anywhere. Like, if I want to take the boat to France, it's over a day. You know, so it's not a short hop.
Yeah, and it's an hour-and-a-half flight.
Yeah, it's an hour to Paris, an hour to London.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So let's talk about travel. Because things are open most parts of the world now. Right before COVID, over-tourism was the hot topic. Sustainable travel, green travel, that's been a topic for a while now. Is over-tourism over now?
No. It's going to come back.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. It'll be a problem again.
And I know some destinations are telling me they're already at their highest levels ever.
Yeah, I gave an example. I think we were chatting. It's like Portugal, for example, it's at 113% of their 2019 figures already.
Wow.
That's because in Europe, people want to travel close to home. They're not comfortable yet going long haul to South Africa or Asia, and a lot of Asia still isn't open, or North America, for example. So there's that trend. So that's a new type of over-tourism in terms of you've just got
much
people
more
flooded.
locally, regionally focused.
Yeah. So, for example, the flight I'm actually booked on to Faro at the end of next week is an A330-300, which is an aircraft that airline would normally use to go transatlantic. But the numbers are short haul, so they've put on their big A330-300.
They have that many passengers, they need a bigger plane.
Yeah. Now, there's definitely... a lot has changed. So, for example, if you remember, there was a story for a long time where all these airlines were getting subsidies because they needed to be bailed out, too big to fail. And certain governments were smart. They put in restrictions, said, okay, we'll give you X billion, Air France is being an example. And they said, but you cannot fly now internal routes in France that are served by train because that's polluting. And train is 100% green in France, it's all electric. So... that's interesting. So there's a few little things that have happened in terms of sustainability, but we've a long way to go. I mean, I was just at a sustainable travel conference in Mallorca, and they're at a whole other level there, in comparison to a lot of other destinations.
It seems to me one big change is travel has become more difficult. There are fewer flights, there are fuller airplanes. There's more hoops you have to jump through, whether there's testing, and some of them it's 24 hours ahead or 48 hours ahead, and it could vary from airline to airline. And flights getting canceled because they don't have a crew to fly the plane. Longer layovers, just more indirect routes. Somebody just told us that they had to fly from here to Chicago to Atlanta to get to Montreal. That's not very far to get from Montreal from here.
Travel is open and people think we're back to normal. We're not. We're so far from normal, actually. We're this year, 2022, and we're now mid-April 2022. Like in the last day we found out, or day or two, that the US government or CDC is no longer requiring people to be mandated to wear masks.
We'll see.
Most of the airlines seem to have dropped it.
A judge says,
yes.
Yeah, there's a really interesting thing here in the States, and I think in other parts of the world as well, it's become so political, which is really sad. But a judge struck down this mandate, and it was about an hour after that happened. At first, the airline said, okay, the judge says you don't have to wear a mask, but we're still going to make you wear a mask till we know more. And then a little bit after an hour, they said, nope, we decided nobody has to wear a mask now, and there's all these videos of people on
basically
airplanes taking their masks off.
Yeah, the judge said the CDC had overstepped its mandate.
Yes, but our government originally said, okay, it is what it is, but now they've said, no, we're actually going to fight this in court, and maybe we're going to make people wear masks again.
Wow.
Then this morning on national television, the CEO of United Airlines said, we're not putting masks on anytime soon. So it's still confusing.
Yeah, and I had to test to come here, but I don't have to test to go home.
Yeah.
So it's still a minefield. Look, I understand airlines, for example, are not running full fleets because they lost so much money. So they're going to run everything at capacity. So the routes are open. So on paper, it looks like, okay, I can fly Dublin, New York, or from Denver to Chicago, wherever I want. But it's once a day, twice a day, where it used to be 6 times a day.
Yes.
So the cost is actually significant in terms of it's now much more expensive. So it's going to take another year more for things to really settle down.
And now fuel prices have risen, which has also made the costs higher.
And some airlines have hedged, other airlines haven't hedged. So some airlines are putting prices up already.
Is there anything else new in travel that people should be aware of right now?
Where do I start? I think it's all new. I think we're back right to the beginning. I think people are much more conscientious. I mean, there's so many trends. So people are conscientious about the environment now. People are choosing to travel better, not more often. The concept of I'll do 5 or 6 weekend breaks a year, I think that has died. I think
it's one long trip.
Or 1 or 2 worthwhile. There's a concept of value in terms of why am I traveling? Or if I'm going to go away, I'll go away for a month. So people are conscientious of where they're traveling.
So more what we were calling slow travel.
Yes, but it's slightly different to what slow travel was, but it fits in with that. Yeah. So there's so many trends. People are looking to, if we think about the pandemic, big cities got hit. Think about New York. Think about Hong Kong. People are conscious of those big, urban environments. So
yes.
Rural travel is a big deal now.
Yes.
But look at the MICE and business travel sector. That's another year behind where leisure is.
At least.
So there's so much going on. And then certain countries came out of the pandemic with a really good reputation, others didn't. So they're doing exceptionally well at the moment. So there's definite new trends going on, 100%.
And new popular destinations that maybe weren't the premium destination before, but now have become. Because there's a perception that it's a more less crowded destination, more outdoorsy focused destination.
And safe, and also if you look at certain destinations where different markets were unable to travel. So let's take Germany, had more restrictions for a long time. So somewhere like the Canary Islands lost a lot of their German market. And the hoteliers had to make a decision, well, do we open those hotels or not? Or wait for that traditional market to come back? Or actually, there's a lot of Spanish coming now, so let's open to the Spanish market. So there's huge shifts and changes, and new patterns have emerged. So it's a really interesting space, in fact.
So I take it from what you're saying that the general message is we really need to be paying attention right now.
Yeah, and we're at a conference here. We've got destinations all around us. That's an opportunity for them, in terms of attracting new visitors, because I don't take it as given that anything we did before is guaranteed.
And finding out what visitors want now compared to what they wanted pre-COVID.
Yeah. I ring a hotel now and I ask them, do you have, electronic parking? EV parking rather. Because I have an electric car, and it's like some hoteliers don't know how to answer that question. Yeah. So I think it's all changed. That's another thing you brought up, contactless travel. Huge with Airbnb now. I thought the whole idea of travel was contact, that you met people, you went to destinations, you met new people, you had experiences. Remember, experiences was the buzzword 2 years ago?
Yes.
Airbnb sold experiences to travelers, not just accommodation. It's it is funny. We're in flux. Yes, technology allows us to be contactless, but do we want to be? Not really.
Right.
When I think of Ireland, where I grew up, and the traditional tourists, they came to Ireland for the people.
Absolutely.
And TBEX is going to go to Thailand later this year. What I remember most about Thailand, having been there multiple times, is the people.
Yes.
I work with Barbados, as you know. it's the people that sells it. So, yeah, there's a limit to contact us.
Yeah. Well, Michael, thank you for joining us. Always insightful. You always have your kind of finger on the pulse, as they say. And we really appreciate you joining us at TBEX and joining us on the podcast.
Thanks, Rick. Thanks, Palle.
Thank you.
And that's it for this episode. That's all we have time for, but there's so much coming up. We are both bringing microphones to TBEX here in Marbella, and we can't wait to speak to more interesting people. And I think I'd like to say that if somebody wants to be a featured content creator, come up and tap either me or Rick on the shoulder and say that, hey, we'd like to be featured on Travel Matters.
We'd love to talk to folks, find out how they got started, kind of what was their journey in becoming a creator and what brought them to TBEX, and how are they doing on that journey. The stories that people have are really interesting and help others kind of find their way along.
Yeah.
So.
And then we're also going to talk to a lot of the amazing speakers that's in the lineup. And I would not be at all surprised if Shane Dallas would be behind the microphone as well. I don't even think that we will be able to keep him away.
Definitely not.
Great, Rick. I can't wait for this whole thing to get started, and see you very, very soon.
Thanks, Palle. We'll see you soon.
You've been listening to Travel Matters, the official podcast of TBEX. This episode of Travel Matters was hosted by TBEX CEO Rick Calvert and Radio Vagabond Palle, and produced by radioguru.co.uk. See more about upcoming TBEX events on tbexcon.com. You can follow Palle on the radiovagabond.com.